I mean, it's definitely more expensive than all of the other places we stayed at so far. Bologna, also known as the food capital of Italy, but also popular for its historic charm and university life. But how much does it actually cost you to stay here as a digital nomad? Well, in today's video, I'm breaking it all down for you, everything from rent to groceries, and specifically focusing on short-term stays, let's say a whole month. Let's dive right into it with the first cost that was definitely the highest cost I've ever had in the last year that I've been traveling, and that is of course accommodation. It's a recurring theme that the accommodation costs are always the highest, but I need to say that this time in Bologna is actually the highest that we've paid for rent so far in this whole digital nomad journey. As of right now, we're actually in front of my Italian home, I would say, and we are renting through Airbnb. That's just the most convenient for us because we're only staying here for a whole month. We are around a 15-minute walk from the main square, the main area here in Bologna, so we're pretty close to the center, but still outside of the main tourist attractions. We stay in this one-bedroom apartment. We have a full kitchen, a couch, a big dining table. It has really everything that we need. A quick disclaimer before revealing our monthly cost for the apartment, and that is, as I said, we're renting through Airbnb, which makes the price always way higher than if you're renting for 6 months or a year, the normal way for renting. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're gonna hear the price here for this apartment. But we are actually paying $1,800 for a whole month of staying here. Of course, that includes all the utilities, Wi-Fi, everything. But I do think that although it's worth it, it is quite a bit of money. I mean, as I said, it's the most we've paid for so far in the last year. And we stayed in high-rise apartments in Kuala Lumpur and in Bangkok. And we also stayed in different places in Europe, in Budapest, for example. And this is double the price of Budapest. So I would say that it is quite expensive. And a good thing to know as well is that the host actually told us that August is one of the more cheaper months because the weather is too hot to come as for tourists. So when visiting in, for example, September, October, the price will actually go higher even. But yeah, $1,800, that is enough said about rent. We still enjoy it a lot and I feel extremely grateful that I get to stay here. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind, that rent here in Bologna is higher when renting through Airbnb. The second cost that I want to talk about is utilities, internet. As I already mentioned, we pay that including our Airbnb, so we don't have any extra costs for that. However, of course, we did get a SIM card. We went to 2 stores and there was a big difference in the monthly price. We first went off to Vodafone and we paid around, I think, $50 for a whole month, and it was 200 gigabytes of internet. But after that, we also visited another store, Wintre. I think it's something like that. Sorry for the pronunciation. But over there we only paid $15 for 100 gigabytes for a whole month, which is an insane difference. So if you're looking to get a local SIM card, I would definitely go for the second option because yeah, it's just much cheaper. So definitely go for that one if you're looking for a local SIM card. Next up is transportation. Starting off with saying that we didn't rent anything like a car or a bike. Bologna is an easy, walkable city. I mean, you have porticos all around scattered in the city that hide you from the sun as well and are meant for walking. So we actually do everything most of the time by foot. Of course, you also have public transportation that you can check out. It actually have quite a bus system and trains. Besides that, of course, you can also find lots of taxi companies here in Bologna. We actually only taken a taxi when we needed to drive from the airport to the apartment. And for your information, I mean, for 15 to 20 minutes, because that was how long it took us to go from the airport to our apartment, it cost us around $25. Yeah, so that's it for the taxi, so around 20 minutes for $25. Then there's one last way of transportation that is not only convenient but actually also lots of fun to use, and that is rental bikes. You can find them all scattered throughout the city. You can just download an app, write movie, register your account, register your payment details, and you can hop on any bike with scanning the QR code. We've used it a few times so far, and the bikes are also electric, making it super easy and accessible to use and just bike around the city, maybe explore, go to a different location. And the starting price is, I thought, $3.50. And that is for like around 30 minutes. So I think it's also pretty affordable. So if you're in Bologna and you want to get around easy, I would definitely check out the bikes as well. In the end, I would say for like transportation this month in Bologna, so we've paid around $40 for the taxi and of course the bikes. Over to another category of cost that we actually did make, and that is of course grocery shopping. So in Italy we're cooking most of the time or getting lunch at the grocery store. Again, this is a bit more expensive than like other countries in Europe, like for example Brasov that we stayed in before this month, or in Budapest, Hungary as well. I would say on average for groceries only, I would say around $50 per week per person. So I would say for like a month it's around $200 to $250. Cooking at home, getting lunch, breakfast, everything that you would need. Shopping is pretty accessible, but it is also, from my experience, a bit more expensive. It does look more like the grocery cost of the Netherlands, where I come from of course, which is also pretty expensive. And definitely when you compare it to other countries that we stayed at before, it's all about your perception of course. But I would say around $200 to $250 per month for groceries. Besides doing groceries, you might also want to dine out. So we do this around 2 times a week, at least for dinner. Sometimes we also get lunch outside. So I'm all gonna combine that for this category. Starting off with breakfast. So at one of the local cafes that we go to, I would say you pay around $3 to $4 for like something as a croissant, but also something of like a coffee or another drink, which I think is very affordable. And I also understand why it's always so busy in the morning at the cafes. For lunch, we head into like the city center and get lunch or a sandwich or something from there. You have lots of different options with like Italian classics or even classics here from Bologna. And I would say for lunch you would spend around maybe $8, sometimes a bit less. Of course, it really depends on what you get, but I would count for lunch around $8. Then, of course, comes dinner. Once again, this really depends on what you get, but I would say for like a main dish, you will pay around $15 for like a pasta or a delicious pizza. Of course, you can go as crazy as you want. You have some amazing and delicious food here in Bologna. I mean, it's called the food capital of Italy, so going out and dining out is like a must thing to do here. But I would say around $15 for a meal, and then of course something to drink. So I would say you spend around $20 to $25 per dining out. In the end, I would say for dining out all throughout the day, I would add up another $200 per person. Over to the last category before we head over to like the monthly total, and that is of course doing fun things, going out, activities, all kind of different things. I first want to start off with saying that most of the sightseeing things in Bologna are free. You can really explore and enjoy Bologna without spending a lot of money. I think most of the people that come here would spend the most on food because there are so many amazing choices. But for activity wise, of course, you can spend money on activities, but you can actually do a lot of things for free. Think of visiting the Leaning Towers or going inside the Basilica or just enjoying like the Neptune fountain. Lots of sightseeing will be actually free. Then of course there are a few activities that will cost you more. Think of Bologna street food tours, or cooking lessons where you're making and learning to make fresh pasta. You can easily spend $50 to $150 for like the big activities. Then some activities that you also might want to consider that will cost you money is heading over to different cities. For example, going to Florence or to Rimini. I would say the train tickets cost around $11 one way to both cities. I'm gonna dive in more to all of my tips and recommendations for Bologna in another video. So if you want to see that as well, then I would definitely suggest to subscribe so you don't miss out on it. But in the end, for the total of like activity costs, it's like a maximum of maybe $40 because, as I said, most of the things in Bologna itself are free. So yeah, and sightseeing is free, so $40 only for activities. Then it's time to reveal the monthly cost of living here in Bologna, short-term stays for like a digital nomad in my case, and it all comes down to around $2,300 per month. And that is of course with the total monthly rent. I mean, I share this with my incredible boyfriend, so if you would divide that, it would be around $900 for the accommodation. But still, when comparing it to other countries, it is more than that we normally spend, and I think it mostly comes of course because of the accommodation. However, I'm still so happy to be here in Bologna. We're having the most amazing time. I do think it's worth it. I think you just need to like keep in mind that it's more expensive in general than some other cities in Europe, or of course comparing it to South America or Southeast Asia, that you're gonna spend more money than comparing it to other places. Of course, I'm super curious to know if you would think it's worth it to pay like this monthly cost. Would you see yourself staying here in Bologna as well? But also feel free to let me know if you want to see any other things here in Bologna, if you would like to know anything. As said, I'm gonna make a separate video with all of my tips for digital nomads or just recommendations of Bologna as well. So thank you so much for watching. I hope it gave you a bit more insight in the monthly cost of living. I hope to see you at the next video, and yeah, thank you. Bye.